a voidable.
We decide to sell their Lakeville property, blah, 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 they write a check, they write for this and everything, and then in the morning, he decides, oh, I don't wanna sell the property. So then that
Was
would-
he imbibed when he signed all this paper?
Yes.
Then the voidable situation has been created and they have the right to void.
Say someone that, because there's another question that under 18, that gifted a house, and so, but I would thought, well, it's void because he's under
No.
18, but it said voidable by minor.
Correct.
But how did it become a valid contract to begin with if he was under 18?
Because it contained all four of those
But it
agreements.
didn't, he wasn't capacity.
Capacity creates a voidable situation.
It's only void if one of the parties.
If the
doesn't-
aggrieved party,
The aggrieved party
only the aggrieved party can void it.
Like my son.
So the minor could void the contract if they so chose to exercise that option, because they fall short of capacity. But just because it's voidable does not necessitate that the minor will go, you know what, I don't want it. They can still get it. It's still a contract. Because it contains all four of these ingredients. It's weak in capacity. And because of that, you can create a voidable situation. But it doesn't negate the contract, only the aggrieved individual. My buddy who drank way too much, I can't cancel it, the seller can't cancel it, but he can, because he could claim capacity. Cool? You understand the four. I can do all this orally. My Uncle Vito works on oral contracts. But you and I both know that it's missing one of the ingredients, so they're not really contracts, are they? I never say that to Uncle Vito. And that's probably why I'm still standing here talking to you. I don't argue with my Uncle Vito. But he always falls short on legal purpose. And since that is missing, it's automatically void. The last, yes, sir?
Can you give an example of a legal purpose?
Legal purpose? A legal purpose is I am selling you my house, which I own, and you are buying it. That's legal. Oh, here's unlegal purpose. I am selling you 500 marijuana plants in the state of Texas. Texas law says marijuana plants are illegal. That's an illegal purpose. It's not a legal purpose. You don't have a contract. You have a prison sentence. Does that make sense? Okay, that's kind of a weird example, but hey, we're right on the cusp of stepping into the land of total weird. Colorado is kind of our, oh, let's look at how they, anyway.
Does that also include something that went against the zoning laws? Like,
Yeah.
like if you wanted to put in like a strip club, like a block from a school, like.
And that's not legal for that particular plot of land, then it is not a legal purpose, and that contract is automatically void. Automatically void. You no longer have a contract. The last thing for contracts that apply to us across the board is the statute of frauds. And the statute of frauds says that for this contract to be enforceable in a court of law, we are mandated to put it in writing. So we have 5 elements. So when we're dealing in real property interest for others, we are mandated to put it in writing. That would be the statute of frauds. How simple is that? But if you're just taking law, and you're here wanting to be a lawyer, and you wanna be a contract lawyer, then you need to understand these four things is what creates a contract. Meeting of the minds, a mutual understanding between the parties. Consideration, the contract has to have something of value for something of value. You have to have the capacity to sign, and it has to serve a legal purpose. And you have all four of these, you have a valid contract. You're missing legal purpose, Uncle Vito, every time. Void. Now, the recipients of those contracts from my Uncle Vito would really have liked to have, before they expired, been able to point out to Vito that you don't really have a contract, it's void, but they never got a chance. So. Pardon? So you get valid. It's got the four ingredients. For us, we add a fifth because of the statute of frauds. Void, we're missing one of them. It's automatically void. Voidable, the only thing that can feed it is capacity. We good? Cool. Yeah, typically we say up here, no audio recording, and that's across the board.
This is
No,
important.
that's okay, no video recording, and that's across the board. No still pictures of any kind. When it comes, because the stuff that we teach in pre-licensing is proprietary, copyrighted, blah, blah, blah. But in exam prep, if I put an example up on the board, before I erase it, I will ask you if you wanna take a picture to help you with studying. So I have no problem at all of you taking a picture of the board. Take a picture of me? No. Because if that stuff works its way back to the East Coast, I could have some problems. And I have enough problems, so I appreciate it that you don't include me in that picture.
No, no.
Or else I'll have to give Uncle Vito a call. Say, dude, I got a contract for you. Well, you should have pointed that out to him. Would you tell him, sir, that's void? Yeah, good luck with that. How fast can you thaw it? Cause it don't take him long to unbutton his jacket and reach into his. Anyway. Parties to a contract. We have several ways we can go here. Offer, we have leases, we have options, we have purchase agreements. We have a contract for a deed. We have a mortgage. Isn't that a contract? I agree to pay you, and you agree to give me. You give me money, and I agree to pay you back on these terms. Deed of trust, and then the deed. Universal or unilateral versus bilateral. You know, this almost sounds like a psychological condition. Yeah. I used to be bilateral, but I finally recovered, now I'm just unilateral. You get unilateral is a one-way offer. You get bilateral is a two-way. So unilateral offer is often an option. We have it here in New Mexico, we call it a time off market, that's an option. That's a unilateral offer. We have a bilateral agreement, but we have a unilateral offer to exercise that agreement. You don't have to if you don't want to, but once you exercise the option to bring the contract, the purchase agreement into fruition or into existence, you just step from unilateral into bilateral. Does this make sense? Yep. Lease option. Lease option to buy, rent to own. Those are unilaterals. Now they have a bilateral sitting at the end of their term. And once you've gone through that timeline, now you can exercise the option, which is only a one-way, you don't have to. You didn't agree to actually exercise it, you just wanted the option to exercise it. But now you exercise that option that was given to you on a unilateral agreement. Now you step into the land of bilateral, and you bring into existence the purchase agreement and the terms that you agreed to at the time you went into the unilateral. So the option that you're exercising is an option to go into a bilateral agreement. Once you go into the bilateral agreement, you're stuck. Well, subject to the conditions and terms being met of the agreement. Did everybody have a chance to sign the whatever it takes me to get out of here before 10 o'clock tonight? There it is. A little bit of nervous laughter. I'm laughing at it. Okay. I guess we're missing some people. Any questions on unilateral, bilateral? I love the national, how they talk about executory versus executed. So once the parties have gone into the bilateral agreement, the purchase agreement, where am I going with that? We enter the executory portion of the contract. Executory is the national's way of calling what we say escrow. So we affectionately refer to the executory portion of the contract as escrow. During the executory portion of the contract, you step through the terms and conditions. You have the inspections done, the appraisal, the survey, blah, blah, blah. And subject to the satisfaction of those, you get to the end of the executory portion of the contract, and you go to closing. So we've gone through escrow, and now we're sitting at the closing table. Here's what closing is, and all it is. The parties agree in writing with their signatures that all terms and conditions of the contract have been fulfilled during the executory portion of the contract, and by their signatures acknowledge and fully execute the contract. So the contract isn't executed until closing. And the execution is the parties agree with their signatures that the terms and conditions have been signed. The other analogy is that all the terms and conditions and terms have been resolved, and that's satisfactory in the signatures. And they sign off on it. Now, our contract is fully executed. So the national law of the contract period is fully and they call closing the acknowledgement of difference in the phraseology. Well, that was a deep stressor sigh. What are you tripping on? Yeah, you know, that's okay. You'll get it. Assignment versus novation. Assignment, if I have a purchase agreement and I sign off that I can sell or assign the purchase agreement, I could assign it to somebody else. There's only one problem with assignment. The original signer is still liable. They do not remove their liability. They simply remove the fact that they're the ones that are gonna finally execute it. They're gonna assign it to somebody else. Now, they if it's in the lease, that they can do it. I watched the Judge Judy where it wasn't in the lease, so it was illegal, and the complainant was saying, no, you owe me rent to the person they subleased to, and Judy's like, show me the lease where you can do this. What you did was illegal. So I guess how the complaint looked in Judy's eyes. Not good. I love Judge Judy.
She's got. So, but you can.
I'm okay with that.
You can, you know, you said you can put it in somebody else's name, but it's still attached to you.
You're still liable for it. So even though you've assigned it to somebody else to make the payments, if they don't, they're coming after you. So how do you get out of that situation? It's called a novation. So I can assign the agreement to somebody else, but I remain liable. Or I can terminate the agreement and a new agreement can be made with somebody else through a novation. So a novation is the termination of the original agreement and the creation of a new one. Simple? So you get the difference between I can assign, or if I want to remove my liability, because I still am liable, I can just, with the permission of the other party, terminate the agreement to create a new one, and that's called a novation. I see this mostly in property management, but on every PA, I see it as well. We used to have investor groups come into Albuquerque, and they would have frontmen running around, writing these contracts for purchase of a residential property, and then they would assign it to an investment group. And the investment group, or the entity, would then actually be the purchaser of the property. Now, their front person was still liable for the contract, even though they assigned it to another entity. I saw it a lot in the land of residential resale. Mostly, though, you'll see it in leasing. If I sign a 12-month lease, and I see this a lot too with the military, we have a huge military presence here in New Mexico, you know this, right? People come into Kirtland, or Cannon, or Holloman, and they sign a 12-month lease. And then they get redeployed, 6 months in. They can assign that lease to somebody else, but they remain liable for the remaining 6 months if their lease allows a sublease. Or they can terminate that lease and a new lease can be created with somebody to replace them. And truthfully, I see this happen because when somebody is redeployed, guess what? They're being replaced on base. Their position's being replaced. And that person coming in is a highly probable candidate to take over that property to live in. Would you agree? So instead of assigning it, the GI will create an ovation with the property manager, and on the heels of, here's your replacement that will take care of the next 6 months. You think the property manager is okay with that? Yeah. Because the property manager is working for the seller. They are the agent of the seller through general agency. And they have to put the highest and best. They have to generate the revenue stream for the owner. So as long as they can do that, and meet their requirement to the owner, they can do an ovation. Let's see. Legal impossibility, a duty required by the contract can't be legally performed. What did I just do? I just stepped from valid to void. Death or incapacity. Contract is terminated only if no one is left to perform. Now on leases, I see that, they will try to assign it to the heirs, the family. Well, I'm sure they're dead, but you can start making payments. once somebody's dead, they're pretty much dead. If a seller dies, can you get them to come back and sign the contract? You can't get them to close. Believe me, my Uncle Leo's tried. And he's usually successful, but in this area, he is yet to achieve success. And it puzzles him, but, oh well.
Have you ever seen that, Larry, like on the purchase agreement where it has a spot where it says it can go to your heirs? Have you ever experienced that?
No, I've never experienced that. What I have experienced though, relates to title and who's on it. And I'll get into that when I get into title.
Well, if the seller dies, then it has to go to probate, right? Because then it would be voided because it has to be probate.
Yeah, and who's the owner? You no longer have marketable title. And until the judge rattles their gavel, you don't know who owns it. What about foreclosure? Yeah, same kind of problem. Yes. If there's nobody left to perform. Amendments, these, we go to contract, and during the executory portion of the contract, we find that we need to adjust some dates for inspections or for reports because of availability of the inspectors, or we need to adjust some dates for repairs because of the availability of the contractors. Well, we're going to change dates that the parties agreed to up front, and that's fine, we can do that. What we're doing is we're amending the contract to adjust those dates. So we do that with amendments. So anything in the contract that needs to be changed has to be done in writing, and both parties have to sign off on it. Make sense? Like common sense, right? So we amend the original terms of the contract to adjust and compensate for the needs during the executory portion of the contract. There's all kinds of things that can be amended. Even the closing date, we could push the closing date out. We could push possession out. Addendum are just supporting documents, like a comfort letter from a lender is an addendum that goes with an offer. It's not contractual in nature. It just represents something about the party or parties. Floor plan.
So, it could be just a, paper that has to say like C paragraph,
Okay, in the purchase agreement, maybe there's not enough room to write something. So because of the necessity of incorporating all these things into the verbiage, we need more space. So we say, see addendum number 1. Lead-based paint addendum, that's a disclosure form. And that goes with an offer mandated by federal law, by the way. So there are certain things that are mandated by law that are, we call addendum. Does that make sense? They're not changing terms or conditions, they're just expressing material facts. Like that comfort letter, that just expresses a material fact that the buyer's already talked to a lender. That's it. Doesn't mean they're gonna get the loan. Doesn't mean that the buyer's gonna buy the house. Just means that the buyer talked to a lender. Supporting documentation. Yes, ma'am.
So, lead-based plate, there was a question on the fee test, and the answer was that the seller has to give it to the buyer, and the broker is not responsible.
That's the federal law. Federal law says that the seller, if they live in target housing, must disclose to a buyer that there's a potential for lead-based paint.
So it's
That's
not
a
our
federal law.
responsibility.
But you bring in a broker. Don't you have to ensure that the parties adhere to all laws?
Yes, but I want to pass the text, so I'm more focused on what is national wants, and national, I was shocked by the answer, to tell you the truth.
Oh, it goes even deeper than that. Most people don't know this, and this gave me a leg up because brokers, some are information challenged, shall we say. And I knew with a seller that if they lived in target housing, once we went to contract and lead-based paint disclosure had been signed, that they are mandated by federal law to keep that disclosure for 3 years. Sellers didn't know that. Vast majority of brokers didn't know that. But I knew that because it was federal law. Doesn't say the broker, it says the seller has to retain that document for 3 years. And now we have it on our lead-based disclosure and that just came about a couple years ago, so you guys finally caught up to what I've known for 25. So we're good with addendum? Purpose of the statute of frauds. I think I've already gone over that, haven't I? Qualified acceptance, where am I? Competent parties, oh, okay, I'm doing this. Statute of limitation sets the length of time a person can be given to claim or lawsuit. That's state specific. Real estate, contracts, purchase agreement, purchase contract of sale. How many different ways can we say the same thing? It's bilateral, a promise for a promise. The executory until performance by the parties, closing, I've explained that. The buyer is the vendee, the seller is the vendor, equitable title, while the seller retains legal title. So during the executory portion of the contract, the buyer is actually in what they call equitable title. I can't tell you how many times I've used that to placate the buyer because they call it buyer's remorse. Oh my gosh, what did I do? And I real quick explain to them, hey, you're already entitled. What do you mean I'm entitled? Well, they call it equitable title. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that if that house appreciates during escrow or executory portion of the contract, that monetary value is yours. Oh, you have equitable title. Now, the owner will retain legal title until the deed is transferred or passed to you. But until then, because we're under contract to purchase, you're in what they call equitable title. Oh, I'm already entitled. Cool. Let's see, agreement may include contingency clauses. It's got a bunch of them. Subject to's. These terms and conditions have to be met during the executory portion of the contract. You're not paid if the contract terminates per contingency. You're not. Yeah. But please remember that just because the deal craters does not necessitate that you've lost the seller or that you've lost the buyer. The seller still has to sell, right? The buyer still wants to buy something. So please don't lose sight of that. Always back up your party. Earnest money is not consideration. It's not required to create a valid purchase agreement. Did you know that? Earnest money is not required. Most people use it as a negotiating strategy. I told you, I think, that I went to contract and closed a $500,000 house with no earnest money in Panama.
There's a question on the test about earnest money, basically that's like, they put all this earnest money, but in order to close, they needed the buyer needed some of the earnest money to, conclude the transaction, and what are they able to get the earnest money back to? And I thought, I don't know, I put, as long as both parties agree.
Yeah, that's true. As long as both parties agree on the disposition of the earnest money, it can be so disposed of. But both parties have to agree.
Okay.
Earnest money is not required, but when earnest money comes to play, it's part of the down payment closing cost for the buyer. It can also be used as liquidated damages.
Right.
If the buyer freaks out and walks away from the contract and creates a breach of contract, one of the remedies for the seller is liquidated damages, and they can take the earnest deposit as mutually agreed to compensate the seller under there's that clause, liquidated damages.
And it's always the buyer's money still, right? It never, no?
Yeah, and it's part of their down payment and closing costs, it's their money from the get-go.
Yeah.
Sir?
What's the minimum, for the earnest money?
It's negotiable, and I just told you, I get a contract on a $500,000 house with that much earnest. Zero. It's not required. Period. It is not required to go to contract. You're still fulfilling consideration, something of value for something of value. Do you see earnest money up there? No, you do not. You do not need earnest money for a contract.
Another question that was on the test also, I just took it, and it talks about, they have a listing over a year old,
Mhm.
and something with zoning, the price was gonna go up, was gonna increase, so the broker called one of his investment persons.
It's illegal, yeah, and violated his fiduciary to the seller.
And it-
Didn't they?
Yeah. I just thought I'd say that because it was one of the questions, you know.
And that's, to me, that's the obvious answer. You violated your fiduciary, you're setting your seller up to
Cause it
take
was
it.
worth a lot more, and
Exactly.
the buyer was happy because he got what he wanted, but he would've got a lot more.
Yeah, and the buyer was a friend of the listing broker.
Right.
Yeah, one called Uncle Vito, and you can see that we removed the population of the earth by a few people.
No, I just wanted to bring that up because it was on the test on contract.
Cool. Appreciate it. Ma'am?
Okay, so I got another question that, how was it? That the buyer wanted $200 earnest money back, and the brokers wrote him a check.
Illegal. Did the money go through the QB? Boom. If the money doesn't go through the QB, it's illegal. I don't care if it's earnest, I don't care if it's a referral fee, I don't care if it covers dinner. Illegal. Simple. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Did that give you the right answer by knowing that? See how you are. Guys, I love simple. Yes, we deal with complexities. Things are intertwined. But we don't have to get all jiggly about it, because it's just simple. And as long as we keep it just simple, we'll know what to do. It's common sense gets in there. Would you agree? So, here we are on the hour, and I'm a couple minutes after, I'm really starting to suck at this point. But you